This is 2014. I'm working at Fusion. This is a woke company. She's woke as they come. And I'm like, if a black family moved next door to your property, would you sell? She goes, oh, yeah. And I was like, oh, why? And she goes, it's going to lose value. I got to protect my assets. And I was like, so aren't you a part of that systemic racism? And she's like, I don't care. The Ferguson riots.
Yeah.
They burned down a gas station. And I went down there and I interviewed people. And at the time, oh, this was against the narrative. You couldn't say this. We interviewed people on the street, black people. Why did they burn down the gas station? They said it was because it was run by an Indian guy.
Wow.
They said, why are they coming into our neighborhoods, buying up our property and running their businesses in our community where they make money off of us? So we were told that by like 2 or 3 different people.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's for, I don't know. Maybe that's why they did it. Maybe that's why they didn't, but that's what they were telling us. But then something funny happens. You got this article in, I think it was in the New Republic or something, and it becomes a book in defense of looting, where these white liberals write that black people are looting businesses as a form of slave revolt, essentially, against an oppressive capitalist system that's holding them back. And if you actually were down there at Ferguson, what you found was the locals who lived there were begging for help to stop the rioting because their stores and businesses were getting looted. And the people that were coming and doing it were people of all races who were trying to steal stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I know a lot of it was set up. I want to explain something that happened in my hometown. So I had took charge of this case in my hometown where this guy, well, it was a city over in Sylvester. It's about 15 minutes away from my hometown. This guy got killed by a police by mistake. He was driving and the guy was walking and the police hit him with the car. The idea was that the guy was already dead after the police hit him. But the coroner gets there and mistakenly runs over the guy's body and then backs up over the guy's body or whatever like that. And they didn't know whether he was dead or not before the coroner came and hit him or whatever. Wow. So the idea, so anyway, fast forward through all that. They gave us all the case files, etc. because I said with the family that we were going to do a protest. This was in the middle of George Floyd too, by the way. I said that we were going to do a protest, down there because I'm just like, no, we need more information about it. Like, this don't make no sense or whatever like that. So before we did the protest, we sat down with the DA. I'm not a lawyer or nothing, but they sat us down. They gave us every case file on that thing, from the toxicology reports or the officer. They gave us everything. So once we got all the information, I gave it back to the family and the family was satisfied. I told the public, I'm like, well, we're not going to do a protest anymore. I'm like, because we got everything we needed. So people were upset about it or whatever like that. I'll never forget the sheriff of that town where we were going to do the protest. He made a post on social media and basically took pictures and said there had been bricks and rocks, etc., sat all around the city. I still have the post. I'm so glad I canceled it because they would have been on my behind about that. But there were bricks, rocks, everything sat all around the city where glass was and everything. They was like, we don't know about this protest is supposed to be happening, but I made sure I said, listen, we not going to be there.
Right.
So if all my people don't show up. But for him to say that, I was like, I knew for a fact during George Floyd protests, they were sending people around to these different communities just to destroy so things could get worse.
There were a bunch of viral claims that during these protests, there were big pallets of bricks.
Yep.
Placed everywhere.
That's exactly what he said.
And the corporate press was just like, these are normal pallet deliveries for construction. And then your story's crazy because...
I still got the post. He literally said they were sat everywhere all around the city. Mind you, this is a small country town, a very small country town, like with one railroad and like the courthouse, like they used to hang people on it. Like, it's super old. Like, so it's not even a developed city at all, like by no circumstance. And so for him the sheriff to go post that all of these bricks and stuff were sat everywhere, but the day before we canceled was crazy.
That's the reason why I'm saying I can never fully. Again, I'm always going to acknowledge the individual, right? And the individual's choice.
Yep.
But I can't let that, it starts to look like the system curates this thing to make all of the blame only be on the individual.
Right.
Not any of the conditions. It's like saying, okay, you guys could ignore these bricks and pallets of bricks and all of this that's there. You could. But we didn't give you all of the information on the case files. We, unequivocally withheld information that would have changed an objective thinker's thought process.
Right.
Then we highlighted and took advantage of some legitimate anger that you may have about things in this community. We highlighted your anger, we turned you up, and then we dropped these pallets off. For me, I can be critical of the people in the community, but I gotta also sit back and go, bro, y'all dropped the bricks off and y'all run the media.
Correct. Correct.
So it becomes like you got to have that two-way conversation all of the time, because if you don't, you fall victim on one of the two sides. You go, you're only blaming the system and not your individual accountability. Or the other side becomes you're only blaming the individual. And it's almost like saying right now, the Biden administration thinking about blanket pardons for Fauci and a couple of other folks, right?
Yeah.
I thought you saved the world, bro.
Right.
If you saved the world, we should be throwing you a celebration.
Right.
The conversation then becomes, okay, Fauci is an individual that's been grimy since the HIV thing back in the day, right?
Yeah.
We can look at Fauci, but we also got to look at a system that goes, we got our profits. Let's go ahead and give them the blanket. Yeah, I mean, when you don't do one or the other, you're leaving yourself open to the other side. And I think when it comes to black communities more specifically, because it's such a structured way of making it look invisible, we just go, well, y'all just doing it. You're not talking about the health component. Yep. You're not talking about the like blood pressure. It ain't just because black people got a genetic predisposition to have fucking high blood pressure.
Bro.
Y'all are putting things in the food and targeting them into specific communities. Again, that still doesn't mean, man, Whole Foods up the street, bro. Like, you could still get to a healthy option.
We went to see my coroner the other day because I wanted to ask the coroner, why are people dying in Albany just in general? Because obviously they only post, homicides and stuff like that. I'm like, what other? He was like hypertension, heart disease, etc. He was like, mainly because people won't get up and go walk, people sit in front of the TV all day, etc., etc. And he was like, food got something to do with it. He was like, mainly it's no physical movement, which is causing blood clots, etc., etc. So he was like, literally, I'm picking up people every day, heart disease, high blood pressure. This is my hometown.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's talking about these statistics or whatever like that, but we got a food desert over in that community too, because like there are no access to grocery stores in a close radius or anything. And the one grocery store they do have obviously is super cheap stuff or whatever just for them to get, but everything that's over there for them to eat, Popeyes, McDonald's, the Chinese joint or whatever like that, but it's all, and they run down by the way, but people gotta eat there because that's the closest thing they can get to. Most of them don't have cars.
And the other argument becomes where it becomes systemic. And I know the viewers gonna get mad at me for saying this. You give subsidies and tax abatements to some of those companies, or like the Chinese stores in the hood. Every 5 to 10 years, it's a new Chinese dude. Mm-hmm. You see the one Chinese dude for 5 years, 10 years, then after that, it's another because they done switched the license and they got a new tax re-up.
Right.
It becomes a thing where like you cannot ignore the fact that you are incentivizing this in certain communities.
You know what I find though? Like you were saying with that video you made about, hey, I'm going to vote for Kamala, I'm going to vote for Trump, and the left loses their minds.
Yeah.
I mean, that like exemplifies so much of the culture war, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I sit down with Trump supporters years ago.
Yeah.
And MAGA hat wearing white dudes with button-up shirts, all talking about God and all that stuff. And then they said, all this racism and white supremacy stuff, these people are lying about everything. And I was like, well, like blockbusting and redlining is a real thing.
Right.
It actually happened. Mm-hmm. And they said, and I'm literally, this is a true story. It happened in many instances, but I was hanging out, I think it was in the Bay Area with like 12 prominent Trump supporters. And I was like, yeah, like it was made illegal in the 80s and they still keep doing it. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is you go and talk to these woke activists, these uppity liberals who own real estate, and they'll tell you they do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So just real quick for those that don't know, redlining, it gets its name from Chicago, where the real estate real estate companies wouldn't sell property to black families outside of this area by the red line, creating this one area. Mm-hmm. And then blockbusting is when they would move in black families intentionally, then go around to all of the white families and say, there goes the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They would get scared and sell their houses at a loss. They'd buy it all up. Then they move the black family out and sell it at a premium. This happened until the 80s. Like structurally, it was a legal practice and people were doing it. They knew they were doing it. They made it illegal. They still do it.
Yep.
So I have this funny story I love to tell about this woke activist. She was a Latina. Mm-hmm. Her dad owns real estate in New York. She inherited a building in New York. And so we're talking about this, and this is 2014. I'm working at Fusion. This is a woke company. She's woke as they come. And I'm like, if a black family moved next door to your property, would you sell? She goes, oh, yeah. And I was like, oh, why? And she goes, it's going to lose value. I got to protect my assets. And I was like, so aren't you a part of that systemic racism? And she's like, I don't care.
See?
They don't care, dude. It's their money.
And that's
money talks.
And that's the part that you got to look at. And again, it's not to absolve the individual. Because my argument with gentrification, it becomes like, oh, they coming in here and they buying this such and such. Bro, Granny House was there for however long. You put interior paint on the exterior. Like, come on, bro. You had an individual participation in the down, the decrease of the value. But we cannot ignore the fact that some of these things are systems designed that way.
Double-edged sword.
If I go to the place and I start doing the right thing, if you are saying, hey, we got this school, we got this, and then the community politicians then say, no, King, you can't, which has happened to you. No, you can't do it. You've already shown and proved your work. At a certain point, it becomes systemic. When you want to talk about culture shifts, excellence, black, white, Spanish, whatever, it's always going to land you at the bigotry that is justified and sanctioned by the state. You gotta land there, because then it's easier for me to check main man doing the individual wrong thing when I go, government can't make that red line situation. And then if that person isn't in that horrible environment that the state sanctioned to be there, that person's environment changes, the mentality of that person changes.
You know what the irony of all of this is? It's really funny. The reason why a lot of people on the right don't believe this is because they're like, what? If a black family moved next to me, I'm not moving. That's stupid.
Right.
And the white liberals are like, yeah, I'd move too.
It's happening. Right.
It's because it's not happening to them directly. It's not happening at all. And that's something I do have trouble with the right with. I'm like, listen, even though you haven't seen it, you may not have experienced it, it's happening. So
But
I need you to realize that.
It's funny because you've basically got, black people saying to the Trump supporters, like, please, the liberals are extremely racist.
Right.
And they're like, I don't believe that people would actually do this or the systems would do this. And it's a projection. A lot of these working class, rural conservative types, middle of the road liberal people who end up voting for Donald Trump can't imagine in their mind someone behaving that way. They're like, that makes no sense. Why would how could you even afford to move? But these upscale liberals living in these wealthy neighborhoods, they know they will do that in a heartbeat. Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.